Hello and welcome to the Stack Exchange, where we cast our thoughts and let our arguments resolve. I'm Tristan.
And I'm Tyler. Today, we're going to be going through spots 26 to 30 of the top 100 commanders on EDHrec and providing some suggestions on commanders we think would be interesting to run instead of them.
As always, you can look in the top right of your screen to see the rank of the commander when we pulled the list and their rank at the time of recording, just as a bit of extra useful information.
All right, well, let's get started. For number 26, we have Muldrotha the Gravetide. So, Tristan, what commander do you have to replace Muldrotha?
The commander I chose to replace Muldrotha is Tasigur the Golden Fang. Tasigur is a 6-cost commander with Delve to help make him a little bit cheaper, as well as an ability to pay 2 generic and a hybrid Simic to mill 2 cards, then return a non-land card of an opponent's choice from your graveyard to your hand. So similar to Muldrotha, who allows you to actually cast a permanent spell of each permanent type from your graveyard each turn, Tasigur will also be getting you cards out of your graveyard, though these are cards that your opponents are going to be picking. By building a Tasigur deck around really strong non-land cards, you can pretty much guarantee that you're always going to be getting something good back to your hand. Along with setting up early self-mill engines, you can use his Delve ability to get rid of cards that you don't want in your graveyard, so your opponents are only able to give you stuff that you actually want. I recently built a Bracket 4 deck around him, which is basically built around the idea of using Birthing Pod and his high mana cost to get something even more powerful onto the field. It's a really fun deck. I recommend checking him out. There's a lot of things you can do with it. Okay, Tyler, what do you have to replace Muldrotha?
So to replace Muldrotha, I went with Nethroi, Apex of Death. Nethroi is a 5-cost commander with a 6-cost mutate. With whenever this creature mutates, return any number of target creature cards with total power 10 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. I think Nethroi can have some really interesting synergies and plays. 10 power can be a lot if you're running a lot of lower power things, and I'm sure there's quite a few ways you can pull combos out of the yard. So if you build this deck around milling yourself a bunch and then playing Nethroi out, or mutating Nethroi onto something to pull out all of those pieces straight onto the battlefield, I think it could be very interesting, especially if you run some extra mutate stuff to keep proccing this ability more and more.
Yeah, I can instantly see a bunch of like 2-card, 3-card creature combos with power 10 or less that you can pull out of the yard after like playing Buried Alive or something like that. I also really like the play pattern of using like small creatures like Sakura Tribe Elder and Spore Frog early in the game to set up ramp and protection, and then getting those back later in the game as well. So I think that's a really cool commander. Alrighty, moving on to the next commander. At rank 27, we have Shorikai, Genesis Engine. Tyler, what commander did you pick to replace Shorikai?
Shorikai has the ability to pay into it, tap it, draw 2, the discard, and make a pilot. And it's also a vehicle. I decided to try and lean a little bit more into that sort of card draw aspect of Shorikai. And I picked Morska, Undersea Sleuth. Morska is a Bant commander that makes it so you have no maximum hand size. At the beginning of your upkeep, you investigate. And whenever you draw your second card each turn, you put 2 counters on them. I picked Morska because it has some of that artifact synergy with the making of tokens through investigate. You get the no maximum hand size, which is nice. I know Tristan hates Reliquary Tower and cards like that, so now it's on your commander. And on top of that, you have a bit of a built-in win con with your commander getting buffed up whenever you're drawing your second card. On top of that, it's each turn, so if you're drawing 2 cards on opponent's turns, you also get to buff up Morska even more. All right, and who did you pick, Tristan?
To replace Shorikai, I picked Mishra, Imminent One. Kind of opposite to what Tyler did here, I leaned into the fact that Shorikai kind of encourages you to lean into vehicle commanders with those creatures that are able to crew as if their power are 2. Mishra can take a vehicle that's on the battlefield, a non-creature artifact, and then create a token that's a copy of it. But in this case, it'll be an artifact creature, which means it doesn't need to crew. My thought process here is slamming really big threats down onto the board, not even having to crew them, not having to care about summoning sickness, and using Mishra's ability to get them in right away. Reaver Titan would be an insane threat in this deck, and I really like the idea of that. That's one of my favorite cards. I do think you're missing out a little bit on the card draw, but luckily you're in Grixis, which does card draw arguably the best out of any three color combination. So I think that you can make up for it just in the 99. I also think it's interesting. Typically, Tyler and I suggest commanders with less colors, but you'll see throughout this video, I especially did a bad job of this, of recommending commanders that have more colors. So maybe just something to spice it up for you guys who I've seen complaints about being less colors. So for those of you who want to see more colors, here you go.
Now, moving on to slot 28, we have Eriette of the Charmed Apple, which is a commander that cares about enchanting your opponent's creatures with auras. So, Tristan, what commander did you pick to replace Eriette?
The commander that I picked to replace Eriette is Castilla the Cultivator. This Bant commander has the Bestow ability and gives enchanted creature +4/+4, and then also has the following ability. Whenever an enchanted creature or an enchantment creature you control attacks, draw a card. I just really like the idea of using the bestow mechanic. Tyler mentioned this as well. They feel kind of fun because even when the attached creature dies, you end up getting the creature anyway. So unlike auras, you get to keep the permanent on the battlefield. +4/+4 is a pretty decent buff. And then card draw in the command zone is something I am always looking for. So you can draw a ton of cards every single turn to refill your hand and play out more enchantments.
Yeah, I think that's how it reads. I would love to have this in my Selesnya deck I recently built, which cares about putting auras on all of my creatures.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's super flexible. You can do some different enchantress stuff or just enchantment creatures if you don't want to do auras. That's pretty much all I have for this one. Tyler, what did you pick to replace Eriette?
The commander I picked is Blim Comedic Genius. Blim is a 4-cost Rakdos commander that cares about giving permanents to your opponents. When Blim deals combat damage to a player, they can gain control of a permanent you control, and then each player loses life and discards cards equal to the number of permanents they control but don't own. So kind of similar to how Eriette is about enchanting your opponent's stuff with auras and stuff they don't want. Blim is kind of the same way, where you're giving people stuff they don't want and they're suffering for it. I think a really cool way to build Blim, though, is to make it a little less punishing, and I've thought about making this idea of a deck that's just like an arms dealer deck. I think I saw it in a video before, I can't remember where, but it's all about giving out good creatures and like weapons and equipment to different opponents. So it's like you're lending them gear.
Yeah, I actually really like that idea. I think that's something that you can't always do exactly with like a commander like Eriette or Castilla, but I think Blim would be a really, really cool arms dealer commander. Yeah, I'd love to see the deck. If anyone wants to try it, let me know. The next commander we're looking at in slot 29 is Arcades the Strategist. This Bant commander cares about cards with Defender and allows you to assign combat damage equal to a creature's toughness rather than its power. Tyler, what commander do you have that could stand up to Arcades?
So the commander I picked is one near and dear to my heart, and that is Fenax, God of Deception. Fenax is a Dimir commander that cares about toughness as well. He gives creatures you control, target player puts the top X cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard, where X is this creature's toughness. So basically, you can tap creature to have an opponent mill equal to the creature's toughness. This was actually the second commander deck I ever got, and I actually used it in a little kitchen table standard deck for a while there. So this is a card I really enjoy, and given that it's now been probably a year and a half, 2 years since I've last used this deck, I might have to revisit doing like an updated version of this now that I've grown a lot as a deck builder. But it's mill, so it's going to be tough, but we've been getting a good amount of mill support in the recent sets, so I think it would be interesting to see it again. And like I said, it might be a deck that I'd try out again. So Tristan, who did you pick to replace Arcades?
The commander I picked is Felothar the Steadfast. This Abzan commander is a 0/5 human warrior with similar abilities to Arcades, which allows each creature you control to assign combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power, and allows creatures with Defender to attack as if they didn't have Defender. One thing I really like about this commander is that it allows you to have a card draw in the command zone with a Toughness Matters ability on the very last line of text here. I think that's something that is sometimes lacking in decks like this is constantly putting gas out. And while Arcades allows you to draw cards when a creature enters, Felothar's ceiling is much higher, allowing you to draw cards equal to the toughness, which can easily be 10 plus cards. Again, with creatures like Defender, oftentimes they're just going to have 0 or 1 power, so that it's more of a threat blocking, but still, you're not going to be discarding many cards. Overall, I think this would be a pretty clean swap, and Felothar is a very underrated commander for this type of strategy, in my opinion. I know that it's a relatively new commander, but I think it's the best we've got so far. And that's all I'll say about Felothar, so let's get on to the next commander.
Now, for the last commander of this video, we have Animar, Soul of the Elements. Animar is a Temur commander with protection from white and black. Whenever you cast a creature, you put a counter on them, and then all your creatures are discounted by the amount of counters you have. So, Tristan, who did you pick to replace Animar?
The commander I picked is Haragast, Erupting Nokite. This 9-cost mono red dragon gives you the ability to rapidly discount your creatures, along with having a merge on it, which can reward you for playing out some decently sized creatures early. There's draw stapled onto it, and it also gives each creature spell you cast a merge, with the emerge cost being equal to its mana cost. This allows you to play out some high cost Eldrazi that have either good cast, enters, or attack triggered abilities, and then use a merge to move on to the next and better creature you have in your hand. It's really hard to beat Animar's ramp, but I think Haragast gets somewhat close. A merge can be an absolutely insane ability, especially with using cards that only have colorless in their cost. Overall, I'd really like to see a Haragast deck. I've definitely thought about it, but it's just not quite there for where I want to be at with mono red. Personally, I have some other things I'm eyeing, but if one of you guys wants to take on the challenge, definitely let me know and put your deck list down below. Moving on to Tyler's commander. Tyler, what commander did you pick?
The commander I picked to replace Animar is Roshin, Roaring Prophet. Roshin is a 4-cost Gruul commander, which when it enters, you mill 6, and then you can put a X-cost spell from among them into your hand. And then you can also tap them to reveal any number of X spells in your hand and add 2 colorless mana for each of those. You can only use it on X spells. So Animar is very, very often used as an Eldrazi's deck. And personally, I kind of hate Eldrazi's for the sole fact that huge discount decks just turn into Eldrazi decks. And I would probably lean more into the like Hydras and X spell sort of thing if I were to build an Animar deck. And that's why I was drawn to Roshin. It is a X spell commander. You get a little bit of card advantage because you mill and you get to put one of those cards to your hand. And then you also can ramp a bunch of mana to cast into your X spells. And I think it's just very fitting. It does the same kind of thing you'd want, but it kind of tunnels you into the X spell niche a little bit more. And that's how I'd want to build it. This is also another one of those commanders that I'm considering building as of recently.
I think that's really interesting because I definitely find myself building any deck like Animar or Rakdos Lord of Riots as an Eldrazi deck right off the bat, even though I really think that's like the lamest way you could take it. And so using Roshin as a way to just tunnel yourself into only using X spells, Hydras, and things like that is really smart, and I'd really like to see the deck. That's all we have for you guys today. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions or suggestions, leave them in the comments below.
If you feel like it, please drop a like and subscribe on this video. It helps the channel to grow, and we really appreciate your support. I hope you found the alternative commanders we talked about today as interesting as we did.
As always, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you guys in the next one. Bye.
Bye.